Welcome to Champagne Problems. We're your hosts, Robbie Shaw and Charlotte Cameron. Thank you for joining us on this journey as we explore our mental health, well-being, performance, and longevity, and how our relationships with alcohol can influence each. No shame, no labeling, no judgment, just curiosity. Welcome back, my friends. Today we're in Everybody's Studios speaking with Fay Behbehani, founder of Bonbuz. Bonbuz is an alcohol-free social spirit delivering the natural power of adaptogens, nootropics, and amino acids for social hype and lucid moments. Fay lived much of her life in London until moving to Los Angeles about 8 years ago to pursue her dreams. And as you will learn here shortly, her dreams are coming true. Let's go to Fay. Fay Behbehani, welcome to Champagne Problems.
Thank you so much for having me, Robbie and Charlotte.
Of course.
Yeah, we're happy you're here.
We are very excited that you're here. We are very appreciative that you made the trip. You've got two very large advocates in Charlotte and her husband, Parker. They have been telling me about Bonbuz because it's not sold much around here, so I haven't come across it, but they've been telling me about the beverage. I've tried it. I love it. I'm very excited about it. We can talk on the side about anything that could transpire out of my excitement. But more so, they've talked about you. And they talk about your personality and your mission and your grind and kind of your premise on how you got to this mission. And that is what we're excited to talk about.
Definitely the grind, and yeah, you have to have the mission to be able to support the grind. So
That's right.
You're fully in the throes of entrepreneurship, right?
Yes, yes.
I love it. Love it. All right, well, we're going to get to know you real quick. Some rapid fire questions. First live music concert and where?
First live music concert was Spice Girls. The world tour in 1998. I think I was 12 at the time.
Tell me it was at Wembley.
It was in Wembley, exactly. And it was just electric.
Wow.
I mean, 5 women dancing and
Just
being
killing
super
it.
spicy on stage. Like,
So
what could a
much so.
12-year-old want?
More than that.
Exactly.
I agree. It was one of my first concerts, and you guys always ask me, it's like really music people, and I'm always
Right.
like, I'm Spice Girls.
Spice Girls.
Like Avril Lavigne was my other first concert, maybe. I was like, oh gosh. So I'm happy to hear you say that.
Thank you.
Spice Girls is a phenomenal one. I have not seen them, but I would have loved to.
Oh, it was.
That's history.
Yeah.
Collector's
Yeah.
items, like we were so into it.
Oh, for sure. They're iconic, you know?
Yes.
They're like part of British history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they are, definitely.
Really,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
All right, what can really make you lose your temper? Just like lose your shit.
It's hard to give one answer to this,
Yeah, your top 10.
but I think people that believe their own bullshit is something that like activates me, because I think that we all have to be kind of open to seeing our faults, flaws, shortcomings, and that makes us better humans for the whole. And when someone is so dead set, like, I just find it really hard to, it thwarts progression in any way. And I think it's just very triggering to me, especially if like the BS is untrue, which a lot of, I mean,
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
Yeah. No, I
That's a
agree.
great
It's
answer.
hard to sit in that space with somebody and you're like, this is not real.
Yeah.
And you really live in that space.
How have you created this to be the truth that
Your
you
reality.
actually believe?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, so
Well,
I like that.
being in the kind of psych world, we discuss that stuff a lot. I mean, it's a lot of self-awareness, but it's also perception of other people's awareness, and the lack of is kind of what you're talking about. And it's just
Totally.
like, how do you really think that I would accept that statement? Right?
Yeah.
What outdoor view or scenery gives you the most contentment?
this is another hard question to answer in one response. To be honest, I was an ocean view kind of gal. But I do think the mountains provide me so much peace and harmony. I think there's just stillness in the mountains that doesn't exist in the ocean, you know, even though
Quiet,
the quiet, and I love to be in the mountains. That is where I feel the most grounded and connected.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. Ideally, I would have views of both.
Sure. Right. Well,
Yeah.
California gives you a little bit of
Exactly.
that.
No, that's true.
But I think over time, and I've been fortunate to have an ocean view when I was grew up in Spain. So I haven't had the mountain view, and I think
Something left to be desired.
exactly.
You know what? I never think about that, the stillness, because there's a peace at the ocean,
Oh,
but it's definitely not a stillness.
no.
It can be really kind of dramatic.
Yeah.
And, bring up like it's emotional.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
Ocean.
constantly
There's a
digging
lack of-
from the bottom.
And
Yeah.
a lack of control out
Yeah,
there. It's very, it can be scary.
Totally.
I used to talk about the mountains in that way and how I could hear my heartbeat in my eardrums. Like it's so quiet. You can hear the ding, 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 ding.
The silence is deafening, and I love that there are places like, for example, in Ojai that are kind of more deep into you know the mountains, that you can like hear the soft wind,
Yeah.
you know, and it's just like so crazy. Like you're in the middle of like Southern California, and like you still are able to hear wind. Like you don't hear wind in LA, like unless
all right.
it's, you know, the wildfire that's like created a lot of
Right.
Yeah.
chaos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like this soft wind that is just, it's just magical.
All right, we shared a couple meals recently here. I feel like I should have known this by now, but what is your favorite guilty pleasure food?
Favorite guilty pleasure food is probably a ramen / like a pho, like a noodle
yeah.
soup.
Yeah.
I say guilty because every time I have it, I'm the type of person that will finish the whole broth, like every spoonful.
lift the bowl, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And I get sodium hangovers the next
Ooh,
day.
like
'cause
puffy.
everything is just, my eyelids are like puffy,
I
and
do too.
so I try to really go for it if things are really tough.
Just know it's there if you really need
It's
it.
there if I
Yeah.
really need it.
Yeah.
But I can't. Yeah, it's not something I can do every month even. It's like a once every 6 months type thing.
I
Yeah.
like
Unfortunately.
that. Yeah.
Because it's not a junk food, but it's riddled with sodium.
Totally. And that's why I'm so attracted to it.
Me too. Me too. If you could know the answer to any question in the universe, what would you ask?
I would want humanity to be guided on knowing like how to lead the most meaningful life.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a question.
But
But
you
it
could
is if
say,
you
how do
ask
you do
it.
that?
Yeah.
How do you do that? Am I on the right path? Am I doing the things that, you know, will facilitate me looking back and being like, I did it right.
Did it.
You know,
Yeah.
like
No
I have
regrets.
no regrets.
Yeah.
And I'd like to, I guess we kind of do have a sense that we're doing those things, like there's synchronicities, alignment, hand on heart, like meditation, you know, mindfulness. Just you kind of know whether you're on the right track when you're engaging in activities or, you know, career ventures that kind of are validated.
Yeah.
But I just want us to, I think so many of us question ourselves and to have the answers, or to have the answer might make it less exciting and less interesting in life.
That's right.
Life less worth living. But I think the synchronicities, like give me those signs. You know?
Yeah.
Show me the signs.
Yeah.
That's probably, and I can do that.
There are things in your power. But do you think that, I mean, I'm curious what the desire for that answer, do you think it's because it would allow us to have some peace in how we proceed, or do you think we would actually, as humans, behave differently if we had?
I think if we had the answers, or not the answers, but like at least signs, we would be, definitely more peaceful. But there's also like, life is so short. We really, you know, I think when we're growing up, we feel like, as, you know, young teens to early adulthood, we feel like we can make anything happen that we want. And truly anything is possible to create, which I do think is true. But those things do take away from other things like that you potentially could be focusing on. Like your decisions do make an impact on what you ultimately can do in your life. So time is a finite resource. And I think there's a book called Signs that my friends have been kind of recommending, and they were saying each person has like kind of a different sign that shows up. So one of them has like balloons. So whenever she sees balloons, she kind of knows that
She's on
that
something.
she's on the path.
I should be here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I should be right here.
exactly.
Yeah.
And the other one had like oranges as their sign. I'm like, oranges? What the hell? And they were like, no,
Spends a
no.
lot of time in the produce section.
Yeah, exactly. And they were like, no, there was this one time they were at, I don't know, some conference, and there was a display of oranges that was just like so wild. And, you know, it was like that kind of thing.
In an unexpected situation or setting.
a grand display of oranges
Oh
that
my
like you would
God.
never see.
Yeah.
So I've been trying to, actually on this trip, I've been thinking about what that is for me. I saw a butterfly on our boat ride yesterday,
Yeah.
and I was like, I think they're really magical.
Yeah.
And whenever I see a butterfly, it kind of gives me a funny feeling. Like I'm just in awe
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
how beautiful and free and light and liberated this insect is.
Wow.
So yeah, that could be it.
And that, I mean, like the change throughout its life to get to that point, obviously. Is
And it's very short-lived. So talk about timing.
mind-blowing.
Let's learn a little more about you and kind of your history and your context and your journey up to where you are now. We don't have to go too deep and too long, but where are you from? Where'd you grow up, kind of thing?
Yeah, so my parents are from the Middle East, but grew up in London. And between London and Spain, actually, my dad lived in Spain. So really kind of multicultural upbringing. Ended up studying law, practicing law, and very quickly realizing, like, this is not for me. I do not fit this mold. Moved into advertising and then corporate advertising, and realized, like, I really want to create something that has, like, a positive impact on this world and humanity. And when I was 27, I fell in love with surfing.
Ooh.
I went surfing for the first time in the UK, which is a very
Unusual.
unusual,
Yeah.
unheard of.
Yeah.
But I think it was my 27th birthday, and I took a bunch of friends, and we just went to Bude in Cornwall, there's like a little bit of surf there sometimes. And it was just so fun. And I realized I wanted to live in a place that would allow me to surf when I wanted to and access nature more. And London is a concrete jungle, so it just felt really hard being there the whole time and not being able to feel grounded and connected to nature, which is so important for me right now. Kind of quit my advertising job and moved to Portugal for a couple of months in the south of Portugal, which is where my mum and stepdad live. And then got a call from my cousin, and she was like, I'm living in Orange County. Why don't you come check it out? The mountains are here, the ocean's here.
The surfing is outrageous.
Yeah, and if you like it, figure out a way to make it your home. And that was it. I came within 24 hours. I decided, I was like, I'm gonna make this my home. And that was kind of the end, the beginning of the end.
Holy moly.
And how long have you been there now in California now?
8 years. Yeah,
Okay.
just over 8 years actually.
And still in Orange County?
4 years in Orange. I spent 4 years in Orange County, Dana Point. It was such a drastic lifestyle change, but exactly what I wanted. I went from London, essentially, which there, the pace is super fast. Productivity is everything. Like a young, vibrant city, metropolis, to Dana Point, which is retired community, really slow surf town. And I just got to surf every morning and every evening after work, and it's exactly what I needed. And then I kind of realized that I needed a bit more energy, you know, after 4 years. And it's been happening every 4 years. I kind of go through this like desire for change, stimulation, like environmental and
something new.
yeah, something new. So I then moved to LA after my 4 years in Dana Point.
Today's episode is sponsored by Athletic Brewing Company, America's leading non-alcoholic craft brewer. Have you been thinking about cutting back on alcohol but still aren't sure if near beers are for you? Check out Athletic Brewing, the most decorated non-alcoholic brewer in the world. Athletic produces a wide selection of great tasting brews, including IPAs, Goldens, Darks, Lights, Sours, and more. Their non-alcoholic beers have won over 70 awards and are fit for all time, so you can drink them anytime and anywhere. Now you can enjoy great tasting craft brews all night long and still be ready for whatever life throws at you tomorrow. Right now, new Athletic customers can receive 20% off their first order when they visit athleticbrewing.com and use the code CP20 at checkout by August 31st, 2023. All right, so the alcohol-free space that you are now in, personally or professionally?
No, alcohol light, personally.
Yes.
I did go through years of abstinence.
Yeah.
And again, much like my desire for just mental stimulation, whenever I say I'm rebellious by nature, so if I ever say I am something, I end up doing the opposite pretty much like 365 days later or something. So I really don't like to label, you know, just because I feel like I'm such a fluid I'm so fluid. I know that I'm adaptive by nature, and who knows, tomorrow might be different.
Yeah.
I went vegan for 6 months. Thought it was going to be forever, and it's just
Well, let's go. I'm curious to go back into that a little bit more. So, alcohol is something that was present and utilized in your early adulthood.
yes,
Safe to say?
young youth, I would say.
Young youth. Okay.
13. The
Okay.
tender age of 13 is when I started, and my community, when we were living in Spain, they're pretty liberal.
Yeah.
You know, like you tend to start drinking, to be honest, at the dinner table with your parents. and
Even in
sharing
the
their
UK.
wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so when I was 13, you know, there was a kind of a tumultuous time in my young teenage years, and alcohol was liberation for me.
Yeah.
So I started really young, and unfortunately, when you're 13, you don't feel anything.
Yeah.
That's right.
You are literally invincible. Death is not even an option.
Not on the radar.
Yeah, it's not on the radar. We actually don't have I think that part of the brain that understands death is not developed until you're 25 or something.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't until I was in my mid-20s where I truly could recognize that alcohol was a massive constraint in my life. And I think that came about through my journey to mindfulness. I started to practice meditation when I was about 26. Not really knowing what I was doing, but I was doing a lot of yoga at the time, and I found a lot of peace in the silence. And so I naturally moved into meditation as I was just seeking answers, you know, and the answers I wasn't able to find them in the society that I was living in, especially in London, where pub culture is so pervasive.
Yeah.
Honestly, going back post-pandemic, and I think after having been in California for 8 years, it's like there's a pub every 3 doors, you know, and it's amazing now that you have options like there's a brand called Lucky Saints in England, and they're on tap everywhere, alcohol-free.
Really?
Oh,
They come in
interesting.
the little green can? Is that the one?
No,
Okay.
no.
don't know
But
this.
yeah, they're on every menu, and they now have their own pub.
Really?
Wow.
Yes,
Oh,
so
that's great.
but they're on tap, and it's like it's just so cool to see because Europe has kind of adopted this alcohol-free
Yeah.
category.
Mm-hmm.
Much, it kind of started there and has
Yeah.
matured a little faster,
Yeah.
even though the US is catching up. I mean, incredibly, but. Yeah, so mindfulness was sort of the way that got me to my realization that alcohol was the negative force in my life. And from there, I was on a meditation retreat in Northern California, the Center for Expanding Light, and I saw a woman. We were sharing in these like really vulnerable circles. It was New Year's Eve. And every time this woman spoke, I didn't know who she was. I was just magnetized by her. And at the end of the 3-day meditation retreat, she was like, hi, my name is, blah, and I'm an alcoholic. And I was just like, oh, that's why, And so anyway, that was what I needed to stop drinking, and I'm my best when I'm alcohol free.
Yeah.
Whenever I drink, we were speaking about this. Like
Yeah.
I'm super sensitive. I'm 5'2". I'm small. The way I metabolize alcohol is really different from other people. So a glass of wine I will feel 50% the next day. And yeah, but there's no denying that alcohol.
It does what it sets out to do,
Yeah,
right?
it does.
It does what
does.
it sets out to do
Yeah.
in
That's right.
microdosing,
Yeah.
which we've never been able to figure out with alcohol on a sustained basis. And also, it's a tiny window. It's like a 5-minute window of bliss.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
So, and then it does the opposite of
the
of
deficit
what
is
it-
much longer.
Yeah, the
lasting,
deficit is longer, and it stimulates and then it depresses.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. As you're sharing that, it's a lot of these lights were going off, and a lot of these kind of self-awareness stuff was going off. Where does that come from for you? Because you grew up in London, pub culture, every few blocks. That's your childhood growing up. How did that other piece come in? That kind of almost Western, holistic kind of view of
Yeah.
life. Why was that so powerful in changing your path?
a lot of us get to spirituality through suffering. And
100%.
I think it was the suffering that propelled me to find paths that weren't what society was pushing in the environment that I was living in. And those paths were like Eastern philosophies and, the yogas and the meditation, a lot of
God, I
the
said
East-
Western, didn't I?
but
Damn
but,
it.
but it is, but a lot of it has been
Right.
westernized, and we've made it. I mean, we're not monks. We're not going to be able
Sure.
to, if you are a monk, then you can live that ascetic life, but we don't live that way, and so it's unreasonable for us to like meditate like monks, you know.
Yeah.
And I actually heard this from Emily Fletcher, who I was listening to the podcast that you did with her, which was amazing. But yeah, I ultimately I think it was the suffering, and then being really kind of curious as to why I was experiencing this pain, because even though I a lot of times did drink a lot more than
Sure.
the people in the group that I was with at the time, but a lot of times I didn't. It was the same amount, but I would experience this emotional, physical, spiritual death that others, when I would ask them, would not feel.
Huh.
The only way I knew how was to go inside. Like it was like an intuitive thing. And that coupled with, I don't know, I was like, 26, 27. You're really, you're past the age where you can, I think at that age, like, if you're not curious, like, you might pass the window of like the window
Yeah.
of curiosity. At least that was my experience. And so the surfing, and because London is so concrete, I think I was just like itching. I was like itching for something different. And I think, that's kind of how it came about.
Gotcha.
Pain.
Yeah.
Pain, looking for a solution that was different than what you already, I mean, you had this life in the city, something different that might provide openings for answers. And then an innate I think part of it is innate sometimes, right?
And the answers did not exist in the culture that I was surrounded, that I was surrounded by. Like, the only way I would have got to understand, the only way I realized that alcohol was holding me back was through meditation. Because when you shut everything off, you can actually hear yourself.
That's right.
You can hear that, true voice almost.
Yeah.
And the feeling and
You hear the truth.
the truth.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to meditate when you're hungover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was this inherent, because I would literally drink the night before and then try and meditate and just feel so much worse that I couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you're so disconnected from truth, and hazy and, all of the things. So, mindfulness for everyone.
Yeah. No question.
Well, so there was a period where you didn't drink at all, and now you're sort of, you said light alcohol. When you first founded Bonbuz, were you drinking, not drinking?
Not at all. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, so Bonbuz was founded at the same time that I was working for the vodka company that I've since exited. Really hard, I was saying, to sling vodka and be alcohol free.
Yeah.
And it just felt very dissonant, with my truth. So when Bonbuz started, I was just the reason it started was because I wanted to have options for myself, and I was experimenting with nootropics for, my peak performance. And I was like, well, these things make me feel more connected and make me feel really good and alive. So why not incorporate them in a beverage format where people are in the social arena, they're looking for a state change. People, in my opinion, yes, they drink for taste, but a lot of people drink to heighten their senses and change their state. And Bonbuz is sort of a different way to get buzzed, and that's kind of, that's what we set out to do. And we still have people saying that we're expecting Bonbuz to get them drunk.
Right.
Really? Yeah.
Just
No,
drinking
it's
more
not
and
going to do
more of
that.
it.
Yeah.
No, it's not going to do that.
No.
But it was very much started when I was completely alcohol-free, and during the peak pandemic when people were, slowing down, I was like, oh, this is my window. This is my opportunity. And it was really early on. We had completed the formulation in November of 2019. I was still kind of doing both the vodka and I was starting on Bonbuz, but it was very much part-time. And it wasn't until, we didn't launch until December of 2020.
Okay.
But it was really early on, and there wasn't, there was a handful of brands in the space that were doing it. So the market was just so prime, and it was such an exciting time to build, When do you ever find a category that has hardly any?
Almost.
Yeah.
Well, that buzz part is the fun part. So I think I discovered Bonbuz originally at Sachet. It was the first product they bought there, and then I loved it and kind of just quietly consumed it. And then Parker did Dry January. I was like, well, this is the best thing that I have had from the store. I think you should try it. And we're having it like at a kind of like pre-dinner cocktail hour. And all of a sudden we're really chatting and he's like, oh my gosh, feels like a little bit of that buzz, but not a high. So it's sort of an interesting feeling because if you're drinking it expecting to get drunk or high, you're not going to get that. But it is a buzz. And
energy.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's an energy. And it's chatty and it's fun. But then it's not like a long lasting or a crash hangover or anything. Like it's just this sort of like slight, hardly noticeable, but then when it's there, it's fun. What is that? I don't know enough about the nootropics to understand what causes that, what's in this, what's doing that.
Yeah, so the most commercial nootropic, which nootropics are supplements that support brain function, essentially. The most commercial one that we all consume, most of us, at least 90% of the world on a daily basis, is caffeine.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's going to give you the instant, the instant boost.
Yeah.
But we sort of microdose a lot of what we put, or like we gently dose it so that people can have multiple, multiple servings. But there's the caffeine. The 5-HTP taken on a sustained basis does make you feel. 5-HTP is a serotonin producer essentially.
Okay.
And so if you I used to take it when I was going to festivals and doing all types of, substances, and that would essentially deplete my brain of my natural of my natural serotonin.
Right.
And so what 5-HTP does is it gently like replenishes your brain, exactly. And so now I take it if I have a poor night's sleep. So a shot of Bonbuz in the morning, if you've had a poor night's sleep, is really effective. And
I did this yesterday because I had a poor night's sleep, and Faye was, we were texting back and forth while she was in town, and she's like, just take a quick
shot.
Yeah, iced shot of the original.
Yeah, the original, just because the spicy can be like a lot in the
A lot in the
morning.
morning, that's true. Yeah.
But it also has amino acids that just, if you don't sleep well, it just like kind of is the basic building blocks of the body.
Yeah, it's like a physical energy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then we have a ton of B vitamins in it. So that's just, going to give you sort of the big boost.
Okay.
And a lot of like energy drinks use it too. But it's just on top of the nootropics, the adaptogens are like basically mood stabilizers, and they work adaptively. So if one person is operating like in a more like depressive state, which tends to be a lower frequency, adaptogens like rhodiola, ginger root, reishi, ashwagandha will work to like bring you up to your baseline level. And then on the opposite side, if you're like excitable or kind of operating in this anxious state, it brings you down.
Like homeostasis.
Exactly.
So truly,
exactly.
if Robbie and I are operating in different
Brings us together.
frequencies, it would bring us it would do something
Balance,
different to each of us at the same time.
That's how
really
adaptogens
wild.
work.
That's
yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty wild.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and like these, adaptogens are having like a big moment right now, especially like in the shroom boom. These like mushroom adaptogens are just, it's crazy. They're magical. All mushrooms are magical, like in my opinion, not just the magic kind.
Yes, just all
of them.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, not only like for us, but for the entire world.
system.
System.
Yeah, the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Everything. Yeah.
I would love to know a little about the alcohol-free industry in general. I assume it is somewhat like the Wild Wild West. There's not a big, long span of alcohol-free beverages that we can look back at and figure out some sort of pattern and the way people think about it.
We've definitely seen over the course of the last 3 years a huge growth in the number of brands that are coming into the space, which, to be honest, is an essential part of the entire category's growth. A lot of people still think that alcohol-free drinks are like a trend and that it's going to die out. And even at this stage, with the number of like, brands, competition creates category. In a lot of conventional retail, Target, Publix, Wegmans, alcohol-free outside of beer, spirits, wines still doesn't exist on shelf. And so it does take, it takes you need a whole shelf to create shelf space.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it is a hugely growing category. I think everyone has sort of a different, at least like as a brand owner that's in it because they're passionate about, the space, and they have a personal mission. I don't know what their journey, what their sort of like exit strategy is. Like, it could be a lifestyle brand, even though beverage brands are really hard to make lifestyle brands because they're so expensive to operate. But yeah, I think a lot of us are, trying to have fun with it, grow, and if we've raised, we have a duty to our investors to, to make stuff to exit. Essentially, it has to be fun. And that's really like, regardless of the outcome, which is something that I'm practicing right now, like, because there are so many obstacles that come up on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. And it really is like how you respond and react to it that determines the quality of your life, And for me, if it's not fun, which, it's not always fun, but is this like really what I want to be spending 12 hours of my day on every single day?
Yeah.
Weekends included, And I think you have to have a really strong mission behind it to make that happen. So that's, really tapping into the why, like, why am I doing this has been critical,
Yeah.
The fun I would equate to joy, right? Like, just a purpose in what you're doing, and when it works well, you get major joy. Whereas if you're working some shit corporate job and things go well, it's like, this is another day, right?
100%,
So I love the joy
exactly.
aspect. I completely relate. A couple lights went off when you were saying that, because when you were talking about the shelving, it's so true. Like, if you go to any market, any grocery store, and go down the beverage aisles, there's water, there's soda, there's fruit juice, and then there's mixers, but there's nothing that emulates like an actual beverage, like you said, a lifestyle beverage. There's not a section for that. No. And there needs to be, because there is demand, and now there's supply, and they're starting to circle around each other, and here we go,
for
right?
Sure. For sure. And the natural grocers, like Sprouts and Gelson's and Lazy Acres, and those places are starting to create shelf space, but a lot of times it's still not in the most desirable locations of the store. So I think, like, when I was in Sprouts and I was sort of scoping out, what options they had like some alcohol-free options, and then some like snack innovation, but it was in the middle of the store, and it's somewhere that I never go. I never go it's like 0 foot traffic.
Yeah.
You would never know.
Right.
So it's still, the retail and big retail has been slower to adopt, just because it takes such an effort, and you have so many players, like, distributors. It's such a process and takes years. Who are they going to take shelf space away from, too?
Yeah.
And then
Maybe a little less dog food.
it's so funny, but it's happening, and it's, I think by next year we'll see really big conventional grocery create shelf space for alcohol-free beverages outside of beer, because beer is the most mature, category. It's been around the longest. Yeah.
You think next year?
I mean, I'm just like so gung-ho about this. I think that they'll start to have programs, maybe not shelf space, but like places in the store where they can test programs
Okay. That's great.
as early as next year. Yeah, I think
exciting.
so. Yeah, it's really exciting.
Well, and those are just the big stores. I mean, now you've got all these small shops popping up where
Shoppy
there's
shops?
yeah. Shoppy, did I say that?
No, that's like I think
Shoppy
I
shops.
think that's
Yeah.
what the phrasing is.
Right.
Sort of,
And,
Yeah.
I mean, they're really a lot of them.
Yeah, yeah. It's like the new age market.
Liquor store.
Yeah,
New age
exactly.
curated.
Beautiful, and I think that it does give, you know, younger brands an opportunity to have the limelight. You know, where because there's so much innovation happening in food and beverage,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's like it's so cool. Like the number of alcohol-free bottle shops, I think there must be like 200 now.
Which is wild when you
Yeah.
really think
I
about
mean-
it. If you live in an area where there's not one, you know,
There's
it's
not one
not
here.
long before people start thinking like, why don't we have that? Can we get
Right.
that?
It happens
Well,
like
when-
almost, yeah.
I was just when we started our podcast 2.5 years ago.
There was
like they were just starting to kind of. There's like, oh my God, there's one in New York.
New York.
Yeah.
and
Right.
LA.
Spirited
I know
away,
that's
yeah.
so true. And now that I have one close to me,
Yeah.
it's really alarming how quickly you become sort of spoiled by it. And then all of a sudden when I'm traveling, I'm like, there's not anywhere to go. What is that about? Yeah.
Where's the progression?
Yeah. Well, I think, you know, people want it.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like a weekly basis where I'll get an email and it's like, hey, I'm opening up Kansas City's first alcohol-free bottle shop. And I'm like, cool, let's do this.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Be there for the ribbon cutting.
Exactly.
Let's talk women-owned companies. I did see in a little bit of research that I did that is something that you have stated and are passionate about, and I love that. I looked in the mirror this morning, and I am a white man, but
just checked.
I did check, and I still am. But in the job that I do, in the space that I am, in the mindset that I am, I often try not to be that or the stereotype of it. And I consistently try to learn and shut the fuck up is really what I try to do. And so I would love for you to tell us kind of where that drive comes from. I mean, I understand it's probably some past experiences and some jobs that you've had that led to woman-owned company, and let's do it, women.
I don't have entrepreneurs in my family, so it's not from there. But as a Middle Eastern woman, I also didn't have kind of my mum was a stay-at-home mum. She looked after the children to my dad's kind of command.
Yeah.
And so, and then when things fell apart and when my parents separated, I realized how difficult it was for my mother. And I never wanted to be in that position. And my mom and dad both gave me an incredible education and gave me the opportunity. I was like a first generation university student. None of my parents didn't, my dad dropped out actually. But no one in my family had gone to university. So, and I went to like a really good law school.
Yeah. You really set that bar up there.
Yeah. And I was just so driven, like even as a child, to be the best in my class, like to get the best grades. I like won an award in my graduation at high school. And even though I was drinking a lot, education was my savior. So I would like drink in the summertime and then focus the rest of the time, because I just wanted to prove myself. And when I got my first job coming out of law school, I really didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
It was actually before law school. It was when I was 21. So I think I started really late. Yeah, I started working really late. I'd never had a job before. And I was able to use the money that I got to fund my law school. I just really wanted to be a model of success for the younger generation. And when I came to the US, I came with a suitcase and I had zero money and I had zero network too. So I really had to build from scratch. And I really did network my butt off. Like I was on Tinder networking, you know?
Any medium possible.
Totally. And I was able to meet someone that got me a job at a brain tech company that then sponsored my visa. But I think having come here and having the odds kind of stacked against me, you know, it was just like even staying seemed impossible. But I figured out a way to make it happen. And for me, my mission is to prove to the younger generation that are wanting to be entrepreneurs that no matter what the odds are, like you can find a way to make it happen. You know, there is a way.
Yeah.
And if you do whatever it takes, you will, you know, you'll get there. Not saying that I'm like the paradigm of success by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that I've had, you know, those little moments of validation along the way that have kept me going. And I just have this burning desire, you know, to prove that, you know, a woman of color, someone that's never had role models or you know, just all of the things I mentioned, basically. That's kind of where it came from.
I'm so curious because there's a lot of female founders in the space, right? And I've been with you the last 2 days and I see, right, it's like you're dealing with like crises getting product through the border and like calling people that I'm like, how do you even know how to get in touch with this person? And it's a lot. It is a lot to deal with a really small team. And I see you're stepping into all of those spaces and you're talking about that hustle mentality, but then also that desire not to be in that rat race, crazy hamster wheel, like still find peace, still find joy. And I imagine that this is sort of an industry-wide balance, especially with so many female founders. How do you do that? How do you have both the drive and the hustle and also create space to be, I don't know what the word you would use is, calm, present, mindful?
I haven't figured that out fully yet.
Working on
it
it.
is something that has been like really prominent in my thinking, you know, and like me trying to, because you're right, like honestly, when you're starting something, you will your way, you know? Like,
Oh, yeah.
the people who are like, it just happened. I'm like, that didn't happen.
I can't relate to that. Yeah.
It's like, it's a struggle. It's a challenge. It feels like you're beating your head against a wall a lot of the time. But I think there are really like foundational ingredients in my day-to-day which enable me to sort of be the most present that I can be on any given day. Sleep is a non-negotiable for me. I need 7 to 8 hours. Otherwise, I'm half the human being that I normally am.
Yeah.
I also, it's the meditation. If I meditate twice a day, it's an amazing day, you know, regardless. I've been doing more like embodiment and sort of like embodiment manifestation, and nutrition, really basic stuff. But it honestly just it allows me to be the best version of myself.
Yeah.
But what I will say is I'm trying to figure out this like masculine grow mentality versus the feminine flow mentality, because a lot of women are in this like really receptive place and synchronicity just happens, you know, like all the time. Like I actually have a roommate and she's like, there's so much synchronicity in my life. I'm like, okay, I don't want to talk to you right now.
There's none right now.
Shut the door in our face.
Right.
No,
That was just
I'm
for
kidding.
synchronicity.
But I think it is hard as a woman because we are more of the like flow, receive, like it's not the like push, the
Yeah.
productivity, grow. That is like a much more masculine energy.
Yeah.
And so the struggle I've been having is like sometimes I feel tapped out of my feminine completely. And so what are the exercises that I can do to feel more embodied as a woman in this role, you know? And movement for me has been something that's like honestly just like moving, like dancing in any way that I want without any mirrors and like moving energy has been like super helpful for that.
Oh, I love that. I think that's true. I really can relate in the throes of those moments where you're really in the throes of entrepreneurship. And I was never creating a product like like you are, where I see there's like so many outside parties out of your control. But still, in the media space, there's been moments where when I'm really in that drive space, I just feel really tapped out on my feminine energy. There's like nothing left. There's no room, and you're sort of in survival mode. And it's like we have to get through. And there is a lot of need for that more masculine energy to power through those moments in the existing systems. That's a really, I never thought about it that way, but it's a really unique way to explain something that completely resonates with me.
Yeah. And I remember my stepdad saying, like, honey, he has an Australian accent. He grew up in Sydney, but he's Portuguese. And he's like, honey, like, you have to turn on the masculine energy when you're in those environments, you know, like you mean business. Yeah. But then when you're at home, you know, soften up.
Recharge the feminine.
Yeah, recharge the feminine. And it's hard when you're an entrepreneur because you don't have any time, space, boundaries.
Where's that switch?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's the difference?
Where's
that separation between?
Zero separation, exactly. But creating time and space for it is the only thing. But yeah, we're living in this like more of a masculine construct. So of capitalism essentially, which I love. I'm here to build my American dream, you know. Right. So
yes,
get into the dog fight.
Can't do that as well in a socialist structure like the UK, you know. Yes. But yeah, it's tough to balance, you know.
Yeah. Well, we had this little concept that I don't think we coined this. We heard it and it resonated, which is the idea of an expander. Have you heard of this? So like an expander is somebody who comes into your life in any way. Like you could listen to a podcast and stumble upon an expander, but something about what they're saying or putting into the universe or building resonates with you, and it expands what you understand to be possible for yourself. And so I think, you were talking about what drives you is showcasing for the next generation that women of color, I imagine maybe all minorities, I'm not sure, but can do what has previously felt like the impossible. And I think even just in this moment right now, by building it and by sharing, by being honest about the struggle, but not losing the willpower to keep going. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so for Bonbuz, we're really active on TikTok. So I would say if you're on TikTok, follow us at Bonbuz, and that's the same for Instagram. And you can see what stockists we're at on our site, bombuz.com, bombuz.com. And is there anything?
And you can order online.
You can order it through the website.
Order through the website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or Amazon.
Yeah. And safe for consumption for people who don't consume, like there's no Delta 8, there's nothing like that in that, right? We didn't get to talk about that, but I think it's an important acknowledgement.
Yeah, no Delta 8 hemp THC. We do use supplements. So if, someone is taking medication that they think could interfere with, the supplements, we would definitely get them to check with their doctor.
Medical advisor. Okay. Yeah, I think that's important. The space, because it's the wild, wild west,
yes.
Sometimes you don't actually know what you're consuming, and it's nice to know if you're consuming something that's truly mind-altering or if it's just sort of mood-enhancing or nootropics.
Nootropics, adaptogens, medicinal mushrooms, no CBD either.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Well, I love your story. I love that you completely removed alcohol for a while, reintegrated, and are constantly in that process of just figuring out what works the best for you. What do you think are the 3 biggest benefits you've recognized in your own life since becoming intentional and adjusting that relationship?
This is who I am, and I'm able to make the decision whether I want to do something or not because I feel pressured or that I should do something. It just makes me feel like I'm more of myself. And if I do have a drink, it's knowing that I'm not going to feel great tomorrow, and that is
It's all right.
it's all right because I do beat myself up,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
so much of my drinking, it
Yeah.
was, and that was like a lot of the pain that I was experiencing. And then the second and third is positive mindset.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is also an age thing, but I am just, I just feel like I'm so much happier. I'm so much happier in the space that I'm in, which is, I very infrequently drink.
Yeah.
and it makes me happy, truly. And then the third, it's really good for building.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, motivation and drive, even though drive was like never an issue for me, but the ability to produce at a high level is there's nothing like it when you're completely alcohol free.
Yeah. When it's not in your way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, at all. I think those 3 things.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Sound like great benefits to me. All right. So the last question is kind of our power question, Fay, is why do you care so much?
I care because I don't think the world would exist if we didn't care. I think the world would internally combust. And I think love is what makes this world, is what perpetuates life. And it's all we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's my answer.
Perfect.
I like
Fay
it.
Behbehani, you're an angel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having
Yeah.
me.
Thank you for coming.
That was a wonderful conversation. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
The information and opinions shared on this podcast are solely those of the host and guests and are not a substitute for medical advice. If you feel like you may need professional help, here are some resources. Visit Patrick Balsley's practice, saunacounseling.com, Robbie Shaw's practice, eventiderecovery.com, or visit theblanchardinstitute.com.